folks. Welcome back to Climb to Your Prime with Dr. Heim. This is that monthly, real moment that we wait for month to month. And, this is time for mental health with the one and the only Dr. Christian Heim. This time, not from the land down under as we know it, close enough, Tasmania.
Yeah, Tasmania is down under in the land down under. So it's about as southern as you can get in the world.
It's
And
further south.
that's right, it's further south. Yeah. A lot further south. But hey, lovely place. Absolutely lovely place.
Well, we do miss that nice harbor behind you and the bridge, but hey, I guess everything's got its charm, and so this is
Everything's
good.
got its charm. Here we've got the chickens and the roosters and the goats and the sheep, things like that, Hurricane.
Hey, listen, there's nothing that is as beautiful as nature in general, right? And when you're in the outdoors and the farmland, it's just peaceful, it's pure, serene. I mean, it's really good. I mean, if we go back in time, I think people lived healthier and happier and less mental problems because they lived a more, I guess, simplified life. I mean, am I wrong, Doc?
Oh, no, Hurricane, you're totally right. In fact, one of the most amazing things about our world is that nature is beautiful no matter where you go. Um, every country, every sea, you just see beautiful nature, and it has this calming effect on us because we do get back to something very, I won't say primitive, but something very fundamental in who we are. We are part of nature, and we feel at home in ourselves when we're away from our technology, out in nature, be it summer, fall, or winter, or springtime, as it is here at the moment. There are mountains, there are beaches, there are landscapes that you can be a part of, and you can lose all that stress that you build up. And studies actually show that each of us need at least 2 to 4 hours each week in a green environment for our own mental health. We've actually done studies on that, how much nature we need. And so people who live in big cities have got to find some time, and we call it green time.
Well, we do have Central Park in New York. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding.
I
But
love Central Park. I love Central Park.
we have Central
Okay.
Park. We have, the what is it? Prospect Park in Brooklyn. I mean, we have a few parks out there, but that's in New York. I mean, we have the whole Jersey Garden state. I mean, it's a big. Well, it's not the biggest state. It's decent sized, state, but it's mainly green. I mean, there's a lot of greenage out in Jersey, for example, and there's a lot of states out there, that have that, and parts of the world. I mean, beautiful landscape and nature. But the problem, doctor, is do we go there? Do we spend the time and find the time to actually go to that,
Okay.
space? I think that's the
That's
challenge.
exactly right. That's exactly right. And let's take New York City, because New York City is an amazing city. But somebody had the forethought to make sure that Central Park was a huge area that was dedicated for people of New York just to go to. And guess what you get there? Ducks, birds, trees, grass, nature. There's even some cats and rabbits there. And why is it there? It's so that we can get away from the stress, exercise a little bit, relax a little bit. But as you said, Hurricane, it comes down to choice. They're the choices that we need to make. And one of the fundamental messages that I want to give people is that your choices is important, and your choices are something to be valued and to be used, so that you're driving your life not in a way that goes just for success, but goes for a way for peace, joy, and good mental health.
Well, doctor, thank you. And I think we all have excuses, and certainly life happens, and there's so much stuff going on. We're going at full
Yeah,
speed. I mean, we
yeah,
picked New York as an example. It's not
yeah.
really the best example in a way because it's probably faster. I mean, that's where hurricane came from, literally. you know, because that's the
That's where a
pace.
hurricane went.
Well, that's the whole thing. Like, it's just we run, run, run.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
too much stuff going on. It's one of the busiest cities, and I mean, obviously, there's other ones that are just similar, but people are caught up into it, and frankly, sometimes they just don't have the time to spend for themselves and really just wander a little bit and just ponder in nature and just relax. I mean, I do see that. I mean, if I go to city, some park, especially in the summertime, or at least
Yeah,
even
yeah.
when it's nicer, people out there picnicking, doing stuff, relaxing, whatever. Sometimes even during breaks, but it's not as I mean, you said 2 days of nature. I mean, that's quite a bit of time. I mean, we're going a fraction of that, which means our impact on health, on mental health, will be probably worse, and as it is today. I mean, it is today bad, and we could do better.
Okay, so just so that people know, it's actually 2 hours a week.
No,
That
2 hours a week. So my
Yeah,
mistake.
that's all right. 2 days is a bit difficult, but I want to actually emphasize and explain in the brain what happens and why that is. Because at the moment, what we do is we get caught up in our world and in our lives and in our work, and then we go on holidays and we de-stress, and then we say, "Oh, we feel good." Then we go back to work and we stress up again. So it comes down to one word, and the one word that I will use is identification. So it means that whatever we have in front of us, we can get caught up in. Now, the opposite of identifying with something, so becoming something that is right in front of you, is mindfulness. And all of psychiatry, all of psychology talks a lot about mindfulness at the moment. And we've talked about mindfulness before. Mindfulness is being present in the present moment in your mind so that you notice not only what's going on in your mind, but you notice the world around you. And this is the effect that nature has. Just 2 hours a week in something like a forest, a park, a beach, or at the mountains actually stops you thinking about what goes through your head and your work or your worries every day. And we've all got worries. I have worries. You have worries. We all do. But when you're in nature, because you are part of something that is larger than you, your brain, which is something that is inside your head, but it tells your mind, which is something much bigger than just your head, that you are part of something bigger. And nature is that thing that we are all part of that's bigger. So how does this work in the brain? It actually means that the chemicals that we have flowing through our brains are more to do with serotonin, which gives us that feeling of calm, which is more to do with beta endorphins, where you feel together and at one with the world. We can actually measure that feeling of being at one. And also dopamine, which mediates all of our pleasure with life. And it gives us our sense of reality as well. That's the other thing that dopamine does. It gives us that sense that we are part of something that's very real, rather than all the worry that's going on inside our minds. So to sum up, mindfulness means getting out of your head and getting out of all that stress that builds up in your brain, to realize that you are part of something bigger, that the life that you lead is something bigger, and that dissipates all those stress chemicals and lets flowing all the calm chemicals like oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and beta endorphins.
Woo. Well, thank you. By the way, that
That's
explains
right.
that explains why when we're in nature, we're happier people. We're much cooler, much relaxed, and just much better human beings, I guess, to be around, as opposed to when you're just like into that industrial level of life, which is not really happening. So, I mean, I always get amazed when you explain it to the chemical and the brain, function and how it all operates. By the way, today I thought about you, doctor. I was driving and I saw a store. It's serotonin. I think they have. I don't know what they do there, but it's weird. I got to find out more about that place. But I did think about you.
Well, there's a store called serotonin.
Serotonin. I'm not sure if it's maybe they do some treatment there, whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
I just saw the sign, I'm like, huh? It kind of sounded weird, but I was like, hey, man, there's something. You never know. Well, thank you, doctor. So again, it's we started the show. We immediately got into the nature stuff. By the way, New York City today was really in a bad shape because we had a lot of rain and there's flooding all over. So
Yeah.
today is definitely not maybe a good time to be in nature, but really it was just very gloomy, ugly. I know you guys are just starting on spring right now, so you're like, yeah, rub it in. We got spring going, and we're
Okay,
going the
so
other way.
that's right. That's right. Sorry, Hurricane, keep
No,
going.
no, that's it.
Okay. Yeah. So these things do stress us in the world. So Greece has floods today. There's a hurricane in New York. We have bushfires here, and we can get anxious about this. But what the brain likes to do is to be mindful, so that we feel that we're part of a flow of something larger, so that we can feel confident that we're going through this together. Okay, so look, Hurricane, I had a rather stressful day at work yesterday. In fact, the whole week has not been the best week. Today, I'm heading out to nature. I'm going to go out there with the person that I love to see a few things, to calm us, to get back to that center of feeling that you are part of the dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and beta endorphins flow.
Well, so Doc, there's something you said there.
Oh,
You,
yeah.
it's been a rough week, and you're doing something. You have that already in the plan, and you plan to go, but you're not going alone with someone you love.
Yes, that's
You
right.
know how important is that to have someone that is that you share those feelings with and things in the event of a stressful time, week, whatever, especially if you're to decompress.
Yeah, yeah. So it's actually vitally important. But I don't want to give the impression that everybody has to be in a good personal relationship, because not everybody does.
Sure.
But you do need to have somebody around you. If it's a parent, if it's your children, if it's friends, if it's just a couple of colleagues that you get together with on a Friday night just to de-stress, we are social creatures. We want to be part of the herd because we are going through this together. In our heads, we all feel so alone because the experience of life in our heads is so lonely. But when you just talk to somebody, that's when the chemical beta endorphin really kicks in. Beta endorphin gets shared when we laugh together, when we cry together, even when we're in a football crowd together. Beta endorphins is what gets released. It's what gives you the feeling of being part of the human herd. And just like zebras or giraffes, we want to be part of the herd. We want to do it together. Of course, we specialize in relationships so that people who are in relationships can keep their relationships together and even make it better. But as I said, whatever people you are in relationship with, be it family, friends, or colleagues, look after those relationships.
Well, thank you, Doc. And again, over time we've talked about a lot of things, and one of the key elements that always keeps coming back is those types of relationships and how it's important to have your entourage and really leverage that social piece,
Yeah.
which really has a tremendous effect on your mental health and or your physical health as well too.
Yes,
So thank you, Doctor. Well, just a reminder to people watching and listening right now. I mean, we are live, and certainly the show will replay, of course. But please chime in if you have any questions. You can put them in the comment field, or you can dial in the number that's on your screen, and we're more than happy to have Doctor respond and answer in real time with you. That being said, Doctor, I want to, before we get into today's really episode, is about we're doing a second part of Chat GPT versus you, Doc. And we have a bunch of questions. You probably will have to do a part three, because I mean those questions are awesome, and I think
yeah,
a human can ask them, but we have that. So I have one question that is going to be funny and maybe interesting. I don't know, but I did ask the same question to someone who was a writer, and their feeling about how AI will affect the world of writers and authors,
yes,
because AI can actually write books. I mean, right now there's
yes,
AI that can do movies and do stuff like that. So, Doctor, I know AI is intelligent enough to learn things quick, and there's a
yes,
lot of information on psychiatry and psychology.
yes.
Is there any point where psychiatrists and psychologists can be obsolete, in the face of the threat of AI, if it is even a threat?
A threat. Okay, so I don't see AI as a threat, Hurricane. It's a tool.
Okay.
And the question is, how are we going to use that tool? Will we use it for good, or will we use it for personal gain, and dare I say it, evil? Because as I've said before, there's something about the human heart that has a line in between good and evil drawn right through it. So that's our choice, and it's all of our individual choice as well. And okay, Hurricane, a week and a half ago, I was at a lecture talking about how artificial intelligence is going to be used to help clinically diagnose people. And the way AI is going to do that is they're going to hear all of their words and all of their sentences, analyze their sentences, and then come up with a word to describe their mental state. Now, AI can do that, and that will be useful, but only to a limited extent. Because you see, I've never come across an AI computer that has an anterior cingulate gyrus, right? Now, in our anterior cingulate gyrus, that's where we generate empathy. That's where we generate that feeling of being together with another human being. And right now, you see your head's just nodding a little bit. That's because your anterior cingulate gyrus sort of says, hey, I like what this guy is saying. I sort of feel together with him just on that point. And that makes you feel good and that makes me feel good. And we can do that. And all these little interactions that we have as human beings are very important. So when I diagnose somebody or work with somebody in accident emergency, those little things go on. They either feel more trusting in my presence, okay, or they feel a bit alienated. And that is something that a human being can do that an AI will never be able to do. So, do I think that AI will be able to replace psychiatrists and psychologists? The answer is no, but I don't think that AI can replace writers either, because once you get to know a writer, it's not just the book and the story that they're writing. You feel that you're kind of in relationship with the person who wrote this as well.
Well, thank you, Doc. And by the way, the response was very similar, when I asked that question. And this person is a terrific writer and author. And he said that, it's never going to be there because the personal touch is never
Yeah,
going to be the same.
that's
And
right.
you're right, that feel like when you read something, you can literally feel that person behind, the
Yes.
writing skills and stuff. And the reason I asked this question because there was a study that I was talking to someone and they shared with me that one of the industries or the areas that people are fearing is that, for example, in the medicine space, someone could literally just put all their symptoms and things like that, and AI, because it knows basically all the words, all
Yes.
the concepts,
Yeah.
all the diagnoses and the prognoses that have ever been written. It can actually give a treatment. It can give things which basically will probably have less people rely on human factor and just kind of relate just on or rely only on the actual AI concept, right? So that was the reason I started asking this question, because like every industry is different, but certainly, I mean, if it is intelligent enough to really gather all the information and stuff. But I love what you said. It's really the idea that yes, it will do most of the work, and now you add your personal touch, your actual empathy, and everything else that's going to shift that personal touch, because people seek help because they need someone to talk to and things. AI is not going to talk to you the same way. Maybe, I don't know, as an avatar or some
Yeah.
robotic format, but that may be 100 years plus later. But either way, I agree with you, Doctor. I don't think it's going to change. Listen, it's not going to be you or me, right? I mean, there's no way for it to be Hurricane or Doctor Heim, because we just characters on our own that different. It's not going to
Okay.
replace us. It could be a mimic, can be something else, but it's not us, and
Yeah.
that's really a
Yeah.
signature.
Yeah, in fact, I've got to speak to that because we do have evidence on that. Because we like to think that it is, let's say, a pill that makes us better or a psychological technique that makes us better. But evidence shows us that if you use the pill or the technique without somebody who takes responsibility for it, then it actually doesn't work as well. So let's take AI. You can type in all your symptoms, and in psychiatry, in fact, in all of medicine, an AI computer can give you a diagnosis and then say, here are your options for management. And then you could sort of go and get a pill and use it. But you see, what happens during all of that is you need an expert who is a human being to hold the responsibility. And the whole of the way that, let's say, a placebo response works in us is by having belief in a person who is an expert, who is actually giving you the pill, that is then responsible. So you can go back and say, I am now better. And this is what's absolutely unique to psychiatry and psychology. You are in relationship with a person who is taking responsibility at that time. And it is the relationship that heals. And there, I'm quoting an existential psychotherapist by the name of Irvin Yalom, who knows that it takes that human touch to actually find meaning in our lives and in our mental illnesses.
Well, thank you, Doctor. And I do agree. That there is something about that human touch. And you mentioned placebo effect. I mean, that's
Yeah.
as that stuff is real, and it can make a big difference in somebody's prognosis and treatment. And it's just that it's amazing what the mind does. But really, with the support system, you know,
That's exactly right. That's
it's
exactly right.
just
And you see, we talk about the placebo as though it's something that doesn't exist. But the
Oh,
placebo effect is very real. We just don't quite understand what it is. And the placebo effect has to do with faith, belief, and an interaction with another human being that is actually got a mind that is transmitting things to your mind through their anterior cingulate gyrus in the brain to say, I am going through this journey with you. And what happens, it's like a mountain climber, Hurricane. If you're climbing a mountain by yourself and you break a leg when you're 3,000 meters up, okay, you're going to die, all right? But if there's even just one person there with you, you're going to get through it. And that idea of taking a journey, even a dangerous journey together, is what not only makes us safe, but gives our life meaning.
well, thank you. By the way, doctor, it's funny you mentioned the placebo effect, but we don't use it in a lot of areas, but really we refer to it,
Yes.
as an implied concept, which is
Yeah.
when you hear motivation and inspiration, and
Yes.
people say, if you believe in something, it manifests, and that's really what it's really that, but not in the medicinal version of it.
Yes.
It's more on the mindset, and it works
Yes.
because if you believe in something so bad and you keep saying it, your subconscious, everything works towards manifesting those things, and it is real. Again, to your point, not very well understandable, maybe, but it's anyone with faith would know that it happens, and that's why people believe in the unknown, and they really firmly believe in it, and they accept it, and things manifest for them. So it's energy. I mean, that's the other realm. I mean, we can talk quantum again,
Yes.
and we go deep there. But it's amazing how we function. And doctor. I mean, first of all, in the last 3 years, I've we've had these sessions. I've learned quite a bit from you, and I apply some of those things. Like I said all the time, I enjoy them. So doctor, there is one thing before we get into the Chat GPT versus you, the wrestling here match. The I want to talk about tragedy and trauma, in light of natural disasters. And the reason I
Yeah.
say that is recently, as you know,
Yeah.
we had the earthquake in Morocco. There was one
Yeah.
in Turkey, in the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
There was also the floods in Libya, and there's things like you said. There's
Yeah.
hurricanes all over the place. So there's tragedy happening every time, and
Yeah.
disasters are happening. What can we tell people that have experienced that, or being part, like, witness some of that stuff that is happening? Because it's one thing to see on TV
Yeah.
and in the news, and one thing to be in location, on location rather, and seeing this horrific stuff. I mean, it's got to have a deep impact on people's minds and psyche, and ultimately they can, I mean, that's what PTSD is. I mean, I think essentially, it goes with you. So what can we say to people, at least now, that whether those are in Morocco or Libya or anywhere in the world that have experienced something, or to just be aware of what to do if, God forbid, something like that happened. Like today, these floods that are happening, I'm sure there's people that have been affected, and it can be bad. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the earthquakes first, Hurricane, because
sure,
there was an earthquake in your home country, right?
yes,
And what happens when that happens is it sort of hits you in the heart. Okay. Some of my people have died. All right. That these are not just people out there that are just abstract people, but they mean something to me. And the thing is that in tragedy, um, people start to mean a whole lot more to each other because, okay, so New York City is going through tragic situations at the moment. We were in a city that was undergoing a flood in which a lot of people died. All right. And the amazing thing is, it brings out something very human in each of us. It brings out the idea that if you go through something together, like floods or bushfires or earthquakes, then it's a shared experience. And there is no way I want to say, Hurricane, that this is a good experience, because it is not. But it brings out something good in the human spirit, that in the end, we do feel that we can be closer to the people who are close to us physically, which is why when, let's say, New York City went through the Twin Towers tragedy,
hmm
okay, the identity of New York City grew. People who were there, they came together and felt that even though there are a lot of diverse people in New York City, there was something that we were going through as New Yorkers that belonged to us. It was our experience. And so something can grow out of that. And I'm sorry to labor the brain, but what we do is we go for positive experiences and good experiences and enjoyable experiences, but the brain actually grows through positive experiences and negative experiences because the brain can learn, develop, and grow. Doesn't matter what experiences you have. And so let's say you have somebody close to you that is going to die or is about to die, and you feel a lot of grief and pain. The strange thing about that is that that grief and pain is actually born from love. It's because you care about that person that you are now going to have a grief reaction because of losing that person. So it actually underlies the whole idea that we're together, going through life together.
Well, thank you, Doc. And by the way, you hit on the nail there. I mean, it's we've seen it. I mean, we've seen on footage and the media and stuff, how people got together. We've seen that, in the 9/11, tragedy. We've seen it in Sandy, for example, in a couple of years back,
Yeah,
and we've seen it in a lot of Katrina, all the hurricanes, different earthquakes in Japan, in Turkey. I mean, all around the world. I mean, we've seen it over and over. And you're right, that sense of unity happens out of tragedy, and people kind of work
yeah,
with each other to support each other, physically, financially, and mentally, to get there. But there's nevertheless there's gonna be an impact on some specific folks that will linger longer once this whole thing gets settled. Because I mean, I think you have that shock in the moment, everybody's energy,
yes,
adrenaline is going, but once it dissipates, then you have those I guess reflections on the events, and it becomes for certain individuals very difficult to manage.
yes,
So I guess there is probably a need to maybe, because some people may not have the ability to access mental health the way we have it. For example, in some of like in Morocco, mental health is not as perceived the same way as it is in the West. And I'm not saying it's not doesn't
that's
exist.
exactly
They
right.
do have they do have doctors, they do have, but it's not at the same level or the same accessibility that we have, for example, in the US or Australia or in Europe. So it is different. And some of these folks and there's also that we talked about the culture part and the religious taboos and things like that, where people tend not to see. I mean, it's something from God, and it's acceptable, and it's
Yeah,
it's it's fate. And by the way, it is what it is. We do believe in that. I mean, that's just part of our beliefs, is that
yeah,
when something happens, it happens. It's ordained. We accept it for what it's worth. We believe there's a good in it somehow. And some people are like, well, what kind of mumbo jumbo are you talking about? But that's what fate is about. And and it's really real, and it makes people stronger in a way. but
yeah.
but 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 nevertheless, there is some people are not as strong in their faith, and maybe they need some additional assistance through the modern version of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, Hurricane. I want to speak to that because um, I said that the brain can learn through positive and negative, but I want to translate that into practical things that you can do going through a tragedy or trauma or an acute situation like this. And this is what I tell people who have gone through that, because I have worked with a lot of people who have PTSD, including because of events like this. So, if you've gone through some of that, the natural thing to do is to seek out other people, to be with other people, to hold somebody close, to have a cup of tea with somebody, to huddle under a blanket together. And so after things like this happen, I tell people, or let's say you've just watched it on television and you get shocked. What do? You actually hug your children just a little bit harder. You tell them that you love them a little bit more. You tuck them in at night and spend a bit more time with them. And you do this with all the people that you love. You value the people around you just that little bit more. And that is the brain learning from a negative experience. And what you learn is, if there can be a earthquake in Morocco where people can lose entire families quickly, then you are valuable to me, and I am going to value a whole lot more. I'm going to say that to you. I'm going to act as though I love you, because I do, and I'm going to hold you a little bit closer. Now I've got to take you to a bit of evidence that we have, because we in the West think that after you witness trauma or go through something like an earthquake, that you need to go see a counselor. And it's actually not the case. Okay, so we did a study in a place called Newcastle in Australia. In 1989, there was an earthquake there, and people had PTSD. And what we did was we got a group of people that got counseling and trauma therapy. and we got a group of people that had nothing except they were monitored every now and again to see how they were going. Now, the people who had the counseling and the trauma said they were very, very thankful for that. It felt very, very good. Okay. The only trouble is it took them twice as long to get better from their PTSD than the people who didn't have that. And that's bizarre. But what it means is it doesn't imprint on the brain that this was something bad. This is something that will cause mental illness. The people that just spend time with their families, that spend time just having cups of tea, just talking and chilling together as people, they got better quickly. And so you talk about a place like Morocco having a different attitude to mental illness. Well, in a way, their attitude is better because you know what they do? They just get together and support each other. They will hug each other. They will pray for each other. They will help each other out. They will have more meals together. If somebody's crying, somebody will just comfort them. And that is what's really good for mental health. And I know this sounds bizarre, but we've got the studies to show it.
Doctor, I thank you, and it's funny. I'm smirking it here because we hear that expression. You need a hug. Let's give you a hug.
Yeah.
I mean, it's real. It's a fact. Of science that has been determined and ultimately proven. So hey, listen. If anybody needs a hug, find someone, get a hug. Right, Doc? Is that
Oh,
is that
yeah,
good
you
advice?
get a hug. Yeah, you bet. And give hugs too. I know
Oh
you
yeah,
give
yeah,
good
definitely.
hugs, Hurricane. You give great hugs. Okay. Love it.
Yeah, that's right. I
Yeah.
do. I do.
So just to summarize, we have evidence to show that spending time with people that you love and having hugs and sharing loving interactions is much better than getting help from a mental health professional. All right. And
Uh,
that's a big statement coming from a psychiatrist,
I know I was
Hurricane.
gonna say that like that. What do you say, Doc? I mean, but you know what? That shows. I mean, your level of understanding. The world that you're in. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
if it's gonna help people, it's gonna help people, and that's the message at
Right.
the end of the day. That's it. I mean, you're available as a resource. You have,
Oh, yeah.
the
That's exactly
tricks.
right.
And but if people can, and I know that since day one, you've always said, if people can manage things, you don't pursue drugs and other things. You have them try to help themselves through other
That's
means. Obviously, ultimately, if not, there's other, I guess, things that you can do and interactions that you can have with them, including prescriptions and things like that to assist. But that's your last resort versus your primary, go to, and
oh,
which is
oh,
awesome.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Having a hug is not going to cure your schizophrenia. Okay. That does need going to a psychiatrist. If you're suicidal, having a hug is not enough. If you've got a bipolar disorder, then you need to see somebody like me. There is a place for somebody like me, but there is more of a place for loving families, loving friends, and loving interactions with strangers. That's what the science is showing, Hurricane.
Listen, I will take it from you without any question. I know this is your world and you understand it better than most, and it is what it is. I mean, and again, listen, I am thankful to have you actually in my world, and certainly, I've always said this live. You have dedicated this particular hour once a month to share this wisdom with the world, and people are actually getting this advice through downloads and plays and views and things like that. And so there are people that are literally benefit from this. We would like to see more interactions, of course. And folks, always remember, this is your show. This is not about us. It's really for you and to interact, and get some of these. Obviously, we've covered a lot of questions. Maybe your questions have been answered because we did have a lot of them, and we're still going to have some more. But there's always new things, and there's always a spin on a question or a situation. So Doc, I think it's time for us to get to that first question from
It's time.
your AI opponent right now. So I'm going to put it on the screen for you. Okay, here we go. I guess this relates to what I said, but that was specifically to AI. But this
Yeah.
is more for just the general stuff. So, how do you envision the future of mental health care, considering advancements in research, technology, and social attitudes? Ooh, I mean societal attitude. By the way, this is Chat GPT asking the question. So
Okay.
asking the question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's a really good question. So at the moment, we're talking a lot about AI because it happens to be the flavor of this particular year. But there are a number of advancements in mental health care that means that the future of mental health care is actually going to look really different. So the first advancement is AI. It's giving us access to information and studies really, really quickly, and that is going to be part of it. Another advancement that has been looming for the last 20 years is brain imaging. We're getting to know so much more about the brain and how it works and what neuroplasticity means. So in other words, how the brain changes and what we can do to influence that in a positive way. So in a way, psychiatry is going to become more biological that way as we get to know the brain more and know what we can do to help the brain. However, we are also learning a lot about what talking therapies do and what the interaction between one human being and another human being is. And as you know, Hurricane, that's part of the relationship work that I like to do. And so that's actually going to become more important. And that's actually going to become more important in the field of preventative mental health, because one thing that we're finally realizing is that if the mental health rates are rising, there's more depression, there's more anxiety, there's more bipolar illness, there are more eating disorders, and there are more addictions, then we've got to find ways of stopping people getting those diagnoses rather than treating everybody there. So that's going to be part of the mental health care effort so that people don't have mental illnesses in the first place. And I really believe, Hurricane, that in 10 or 15 years, our society will have an awakening that we have left family and friends behind, and we have left our human interactions behind, and we have pursued wealth, and we have pursued work, and we have pursued pleasure and entertainment to the detriment of ourselves. And I think we're really going to come back to valuing each other as human beings, valuing relationships, valuing family. And family can be defined as many different ways, but it is going to be more and more important. So what does the future of mental health care look like? It's going to be this strange but wonderful blend of AI, brain imaging, the importance of human interactions, and most importantly, preventative mental health. So making sure that people are living in a way that they don't get mental health problems in the first place, if that's at all possible. And that's the area that I'm in. So I'm going to talk a lot about that, Hurricane.
Well, and we welcome that. But so that's actually triggering a question in my brains. Now, you know me, I'm in the insurance space, and
Yeah,
insurance is all about, I guess, managing, and keeping people healthier as opposed to sicker, because it's a
yeah, that's
cost
right.
thing. Let's call it for what it is. Insurance likes people to stay healthy because it pays less from a
Yeah,
selfish, reason. But in that same note, it focuses on preventative healthcare or
yes,
in general.
yes,
But so
yes,
so here's a question, and this is not necessarily just for your doctor, for anybody that's listening out there, and for the experts and industry and healthcare industry stuff. Why is it that we do have a physical that is annual, but we don't have a mental, annual? Maybe that's something that needs to be incorporated in our lives today. I mean, considering everything that's happening to us day in, day out, it should be an annual checkup for your mental state. And, it's not like the taboo. Oh my God, I'm seeing, I'm sorry to quote this, the shrink, or I'm seeing whatever, like someone,
yeah,
like a psychiatrist. Oh my God, this is like, I would need to see like how well I'm doing. And, I maintain that. If we were to implement something like that, that can change the dynamics. You're talking about preventive and being ahead of the game. That's what we do. We go do the physical. So we're early detection, prevention, everything. You can see things in advance. If there's a trend, there's something happening, you can literally take care of it before it gets worse. Similarly,
yes,
if you have some traits of mental illness that is building up, or you have some, I don't know, stress, depression, whatever is building up, that could lead to serious problems in the future. Why can we add that? So again, if we're out there, I mean, something to champion maybe in the insurance space, in healthcare, and become, and maybe more psychologists and psychiatrists can become part of that front, and really add that to that annual checkup like you do. We do the same thing. You go to your routine, oral hygiene and oral health. You have to do that every 6 months, whatever. We do it for eyesight. A lot of people do the annual checkups for the eyesight. I mean, mental health is just as important, if not more important than everything else. Because if this goes, everything else is not going to work properly. I mean, again, this is just me. So, doctor, what do you think of that?
Hurricane, Hurricane, that's a very good comment because what you're saying is very right that mental health is important as dental health or any other sort of health. But one place where there is change is actually in the workplace. When I have, let's say, yearly talks with people who work in my organization under me, we've actually got a few questions now written into that says, how is your mental health? How is your work-life balance? Are you taking care of yourself? And at this stage, it's only to make sure that the conversation is had, but we are seeing that mental health is very important. So if we start having these conversations, and in Australia, we have this thing called Are You OK? To make sure that people talk about their mental health with their colleagues, because there has been a lot of stigma around it, around mental health. There's a lot less now because, unfortunately, because so many people suffer from mental health problems, that people talk about it more. But the more that we talk about it, the more that we can encourage each other to get through this life together, the more that we are actually working in this space of preventative mental health. And you being in insurance, you know how important that actually is, Hurricane.
Oh, I can tell you, it's one of the areas that sometimes, from a cost aspect of it, it is costly. I mean, behavioral health is, sometimes not covered 100%. There's certain things it can be also very extremely, expensive for
Yeah.
the patients, for the insurer, and so it's and the other thing, you want to do this where it's outside of the clinic. You don't have to go and admit people, into the facilities. Now, probably
That's right.
facilities not going to be happy about what I'm saying, because it's good to have patients in place. I mean, obviously some people that own these facilities, obviously that's business for them, but those need to be like, when, like in the time of COVID, we live the actual beds to the people that need it the most. Same
Yeah.
concept. If someone is really advanced and they need to be in an institution, that's a different story. But if we can prevent people from even getting there, and
Yes.
again, we've touched on the subject of suicide. You can potentially, if someone is going to a doctor annually and there's an evaluation, there's a tracking, there's a good chance that you will reveal a potential,
Yes.
tendency that can lead to something of that nature that we don't have today. And by the way, it doesn't matter what part of the world it is. Whoever is willing to take this initiative and get it started probably will be ahead of the game in this particular battle against mental health and
Yeah.
mental
Yeah.
behavior. So
Yes, and this harks right back to the AI question that you gave me a few minutes ago about the future of mental health. This is what we call preventative mental health, uh, making sure that people are seen and that we have things in place for people to make sure that they don't have mental health issues. And what the evidence shows us that we actually need each other. We need good interactions with each other. We need to foster our relationships so that we have a healthy flow of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and beta endorphins so that we can prevent mental health problems. However, there are some mental health problems that will always need the help of psychologists and psychiatrists.
well, thank you, doctor. And there's one thing that we've covered over and over, and I don't think it's going to go away. The environment, the financial aspect of things, businesses, all these things have
Yeah,
a direct impact on the mental health. I mean, it has on the physical, but certainly, I believe it has more of a mental than a physical stuff. People get tired,
yeah,
but they because they're depressed or they're stressed more than actually because they're physically tired.
yeah,
I mean, so we just need to do more of this work, and hopefully we'll get more people into the top shape. And certainly using the different tools, and like going out in nature, doing things, the breathing techniques, all the stuff, and seeing a
yeah.
particular psychiatrist or psychologist to help, early on. I really think, I mean, we do all those checkups, just add one more. I mean, you will save in the long run. I mean, whether we're in insurance space or whoever it is, I think it's going to be better, for people. But that's just my opinion.
Oh, no,
uh,
no, definitely, definitely. Great idea.
all right, well, thank you, doctor. So now, we're gonna go to our second question. So I'm
All
gonna
right.
put it up on the screen. Here we go. If someone is considering seeking help for their mental health, what advice would you give them? What steps can listeners take if they are unsure about the type of professional help they need?
Okay, okay, that's another great question, and really the easiest thing to do is to ask yourself, well, if you're considering seeking help for a pain that you have in your chest, what would you do, right? Now the thing is that if the pain is worrying you, then you want to find out what it is. And so sometimes that means going to accident and emergency, sometimes that means going to a doctor, sometimes it means seeing somebody else, but it's a pain. And once you know what it is, then you know whether something needs to be done about it or not. It's the same with mental health. Depression or anxiety are really just specific types of pain. And so you want to find out what that pain is. You want to go to some sort of an expert that has seen that type of pain to see whether this is the pain that you've got to do something about, or if it's a pain that will take care of itself, or if there's something that you can do to lessen that pain. And so somehow you need to see an expert. Now in Australia, we have actually a great system in that the first person that you see will be a GP, a general physician, or a family doctor who will decide what level that pain of yours is on and decide where you need to go with that, if anywhere. So in the States, the same thing exists. You go to see a doctor, and we've talked about this before. The thing that stops people from seeing a doctor about their mental health is trust. Will I trust what a doctor tells me? And because there's so many things that are on the internet about how diagnoses are wrong, or this diagnosis isn't right, or whatever, so it erodes trust. But it's very difficult to get through life without trusting somebody somewhere. So I would suggest to people that they find a mental health professional that they trust. How do you know if you're going to trust them? You meet them, and then you build up a relationship, and you go with them, and you can actually ask, can I trust you? And the person will be hit on a very human level and say, well, yeah, you can. I'm giving you the best advice that I have. All right. And if you feel that trust build up, then you're already on a journey that can help your mental health.
Well, thank you, Doc. Well, Doc, I think most of psychiatrists and psychologists, like, well, maybe I don't know. I mean, I know for primary care doctor or GPs, typically, I mean, you don't have a consultation. I mean, you just do a visit. Now, is there a practice where there is a consultation just to kind of get to know each other first before you even and same thing like with a lawyer concept, right? You meet with them, you have a discussion. I don't know if that's something that is real or
Yeah.
not. I'm asking the question because
Yeah.
maybe that can change the dynamic if you are able to talk to someone and get to gauge them. Is this going to be a good I guess match for me? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Just a question that came up.
No, that's actually a very good question. But the thing is that there's so much of a need for people to be seen by doctors, and there is a worldwide doctors shortage, and good grief, a worldwide psychiatrist shortage, that there's never going to be enough. So that idea of seeing if you fit in with somebody before you actually start working with them, we
Not
don't have
gonna.
the resources for that. So sometimes you've actually got to trust that this person has done a medical degree, that this person has seen thousands of people, and that other people have trusted this person. And the thing is that, Hurricane, we live in a world of social media where you can get a lot of information yourself, but you don't know if you can trust that information. And by the process of getting the information yourself, you start to trust the information that you get on the internet rather than trusting a person. And the thing is that if you are in pain, so depression, anxiety, or addictions, and you want that pain gone, then somewhere along the line, you're going to have to trust somebody. And healthcare professionals can be trusted. I mean, I got to say, you don't go into the healthcare profession for money. You don't spend years and even decades studying, okay, for lifestyle issues. Generally speaking, what I find is that people go into healthcare because they have a heart for other people. And in brain terms, that means they've got an anterior singular gyrus that is making too much empathy. So they want to share it with others. They do actually want to help you. And so, if you can go in with that assumption, okay, then more often than not, 99% of the time, that expectation will be fulfilled. Are there unscrupulous mental health professionals? Yeah, of course there are, because humans, unfortunately, have that ability. But just like a relationship, you've got to trust sometime. You've got to take a plunge. You may get hurt, but you know what? 99% of the time, you won't. They're there to help you.
Well, thank you, Doc. But we do live, as you said, in a world that there is some gain, to be made, and financial gain,
Yeah,
period. And there are people that, I mean, I think there is a sentiment. At least I know in the states it is happening, that the medicine, all the healthcare has been more capitalized, and really became more of a financial institution rather than the mission of caring and health. Now, that's a big statement, but there is a sentiment that, for example, a good example is throughout COVID, for example, in the pandemic. There's a lot of talk out there about, this is all about the money. It's about, generating revenue, the pharma, this, that, the other. There was a lot of talk about, the utilization of intubation and all the stuff, and those ventilators in the hospital, because there's pay. So it became, there's a lot of, I guess, blurry stuff and fog around it because of the financial piece. And I think we need to, maybe doctors can do a lot more to present that we are not that. We really care. Now, by the way, on the same token, there's a whole bunch of doctors out there during the pandemic, pre-pandemic, during, and post, that are still out there giving the message that we're here to care, and we want you to see the real thing, and not, this is not about money. It's about really your care and what works and what doesn't, what you should do about it. It's along the line that we just said, doctor. There are great doctors. There's a lot of folks out there that I believe in. They're in it for the mission. Yes, the money comes, but I mean, to be honest with you, we've talked about this in a different show. It takes a lot of money to become a doctor. And there's a lot of stuff that goes behind it. And certainly you want to get paid back, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as long as the core mission is never, diluted and kind of veered off, and it's still the actual lead of your, practice, then everything else is good. I think so. So that's a sentiment that can change, and I think the trust factor plays there. But you're right, like, people
yeah,
can follow people today. They can
yeah,
see your track. You can see things. They can Google you, or they can search you. There's so many things. Although there's some credentialing, you can search someone's, practices and things like that. I can tell you, I'm in insurance space. We investigate these things, and we've seen a lot of doctors that do the wrong stuff, and they get penalized. We've seen pharmacists that do bad
yeah,
things and they get penalized. I mean, there's fraud, between, in the patient space and the healthcare space, and
yeah,
that's why we have fraud, waste, and abuse, controls, and government agencies that monitor. But it's for the general public. It is risky because you don't know who to trust. Sometimes you don't know if I'm
yeah,
just getting the pills because I'm getting, the pills are paying me, or, and there's a lot of talk about that in general, especially when it comes to prescription drugs and things. It's difficult. And in the mental health is equal. But I love what you said, that you got to leap forward. You have to have that leap of faith, and you have to trust. And 99% of the time, you will not be disappointed. And that's important to highlight, Doc. Thank you.
no, that's all right, Hurricane. But let's go to the space that you're talking about,
Uh
because well, you're in a country that monetizes basically more than any other country, and there are other countries that have, let's say, a more socialist healthcare system, and I'm thinking about the United Kingdom, where they have the national healthcare, the NHS, the National Health Service, where it's very strictly regulated, and there's not as much choice of doctors, and there's less monetizing. But the thing is that that when you're seeing somebody, that they're not trying to make money out of you. And the risk in monetizing as much as the USA does is that there's always this sense that, is this person just wanting to make money out of me? And so we've got to get into a very big political space to talk about that. And this is one of the downfalls, if you like, of a capitalist system. There are a lot of advantages, but we are here in a situation where that means that people can be taken care of. And there are big pharmaceutical companies that have been given huge fines for actually misrepresenting what they're actually doing. And that erodes trust. And so we come back down to trust. And that is a real pity. But on a societal level, we need to find some way to keep people accountable. And this is why I'm actually more comfortable in a country that does have some sort of a national health service, so that everybody is covered at a basic level. Now, I know that was a controversy a couple of years ago in the USA, and in Australia we have a system that is two-tiered. That if you want something extra, then you can pay for that and get sort of a healthcare system that is more private rather than public. But everybody in Australia will get a basic rate of healthcare to make sure that they're actually taken care of. And I think that's actually a good solution. However, all society things on the side, as an individual, you need to find somebody who you can trust. So it comes down to recommendations. It actually comes down to asking somebody, are you here just to make money out of me? All right. And then
I doubt they're gonna answer, but maybe, but you're right. I mean, you can read them if they're honest and really genuine or not.
Well, you do, because it has to do with building up trust. Okay. So if you trust somebody who has seen somebody good, then you go to see them. The only bad outcome is not trusting anybody, because then you end up alone and in depression or anxiety or addiction. If you're alone without any help, without anybody that you trust, then you will actually end up on a pathway that is much worse than finding somebody who at least will give you the expertise to move out of that, even if they're not a trustworthy person. Even if somebody's not trustworthy, they will still give you the information to help you. And I got to say, I'm sorry that we're having this conversation, because healthcare is something that I value as almost like a vocation. It's almost like you're called upon to help people. That's what we do. If you want to make money first, then you go to the stock market. All right. I get rewarded, and I get rewarded well for what I do. But my primary objective is to help people, because that's actually where the best rewards are, Hurricane.
And that should be. By the way, I agree with you in the system where there should be a baseline of everybody getting basic health, and then you can upgrade. I mean, you can get your basic physicals, you can
That's right.
get all the stuff, and then if you want to do something extra, I mean, you can pay all you want. That's up to you. Which I think Canada has a similar system too.
Yes.
But you're right, in the U.S., and I can tell you a true story. This is my own personal experience. So when my daughter, my wife was pregnant with my daughter. Um, she was recommended an OBGYN doctor, and soon as he saw her the first time, oh, you're getting a C-section. And luckily I had a friend, she passed, but she was an advocate and social worker, and she said, do not go to that doctor, because every single pregnancy with him is a C-section, because at the time, this was like 18 years ago, it was literally $6,000 per surgery, as
Yeah.
opposed to a regular delivery, which was like less, a couple of $1,000s. So it was motivated by money, not by the care. So it didn't matter whether you could have a baby normally or not, that doctor would still do this. And by the way, this is just for our audiences. Be careful out there. You need to know and find solutions. If someone tells you this is the only way, find if there's another way, because you might just get stuck with that concept and that's it. So do your research. Like, to your point, is finding the trust. And you're right. There are doctors that are doing this for the right reasons, and it's not so much. And the money is going to come there. If you do the right job and you're good, people will actually come to you no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's it. But some people like this, when they do that, they're just going to lose business. Eventually, people are going to know about them, and no one's going to go to them. And that's kind of like the
Yeah.
reputation that this particular doctor built up. And yet, by the way, she did deliver normal without any problems. so,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
essentially, if we had gone to him, she would have just had a C-section for nothing, which is higher risk surgery. This, under the gun, anesthesia. I mean, under the knife, anesthesia, all the stuff. Not good for you if you don't have to go through it. So
Yeah.
again, just on point, doctor. When it comes to
No,
that.
no,
So
that's all right. And Hurricane, I got to say, it grieves me that there are stories like that, and that there are a lot of stories like that. But we have to have our eyes open, and I have to be realistic about this. Okay, not every doctor out there is a saint. But going back to the first question, how is this going to be part of the future of mental health care, or of the future of all health care? It comes down to, we are in a society that is grappling with ideas as to where we should be politically even. And so the thing is that the profit motive is a good incentive for getting things done, but how do we use that while de-incentivizing ways of lining your own pockets rather than actually helping there? Because the fundamental thing about capitalism is that you get rewarded for service. And the thing is that if we keep that focus on service and find ways of incentivizing good service to people, then you'll be using the system to its good end rather than its evil end, because unfortunately the spectrum exists no matter what political system you're under.
Well, it is. And by the way, I love that because to your point, if, and by the way, there is in our world, at least in the insurance space, because we're the payers, we
Yes.
are actually in a concept now. We have value based kind of concepts where you actually work with doctors agreements whereby the more the care is delivered properly, the more,
Yeah.
the folks are healthier, the more they get compensated because they maintain their health in the proper shape, as opposed to just like, go through the mill and just that. So that's one of the new, it's not new, I mean, it's been around, but it's becoming more relevant, at least in the States, with what we refer to as managed care. It is happening. Now, is it in the commercial space? I'm not sure. I mean, because I don't, live in that space, but at least in the government programs, it is happening. So there's a trend towards that. And I'm sure it's going to get better because it's a way to control the care, to control the cost, and also provide higher, care to the patients and to the, I guess for the plans of the members. So it is happening, and it's just gonna get slowly but surely. So there is the light at the end of the tunnel, as they say.
Yes, there is. There is.
All right. Well, listen, Doc. I mean, we just hit the hour mark. I know you have a date in nature that you
Nature and
gotta
I, we're
that
going to
you
get it
gotta.
on tonight. Yes.
That's right, baby. That's right. And listen, you gotta have it, and it's beautiful. Again, for those that are just new to the show, I mean, Dr. Heim and Dr. Colline, who's behind the scenes right now, we had a terrific show. They had actually they have a book that it's about resilient relationship. So they really have a great relationship, so they practice what they preach, out there. Um, but yeah, so doctor, thank you so much for, I mean, we've barely scratched the questions. I mean, I have like
Yeah.
tons of them still left, so we'll keep bringing those questions up, and I believe that you're pleased with those questions, and they really hit on some topics that are very I guess vital, to the discussion of mental health. So we will bring the additional questions next time, and we have a whole list that's actually on our comments right now, and I have a whole bunch of other ones. So we'll that are mixed between GPT and humans. That's funny, humans and GPT. That's cool. But yeah, so that's it. So folks, by the way, any last words for today's episode before we close the show, Doctor?
The only thing that I want to say is to overcome the trust problems that we have in our society, because they're there in every society. We've got to value the people close to us, and the more trust we have in them, then we've got a secure base to explore a world where trust becomes a bit problematic. So again, it comes down to taking care of the people that are close to you.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Doctor, it's always a pleasure. I guess next time it will be the end of October. Now, there might be, you and I will have to talk about that date because I'll be in a different time zone. So
Okay.
we might have to reschedule. We might have the same time. I don't know. We just got to figure out because I'll be in a different zone. But definitely we want to book that, and we'll figure out the exact time. Hopefully we'll maintain the same. Let's see how it works. but yeah. So thank you so much, Doc, for, as always, great time, a lot of good insights today. And so, folks, this is your Climb to Your Prime rendezvous that is once a month, the last Friday of the month, typically 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. In Australia is 11 a.m. Is it 11 a.m. now or 10 for you guys?
Okay, so we're just going 12 now, so it's
All right,
11
so
a.m. here.
yeah,
Yeah.
so 11. Okay, so no daylight saving yet. We will have that in March, so I think that's gonna shift things. Well, actually, it's coming up soon, so yeah, it's gonna change things. Yeah, but until then, Doctor, thank you so much, and folks, thank you for being with us, for watching. Please do send in your comments, your questions, and would love to hear from you, and certainly, Doctor, would love to answer your questions. And honestly, you don't need to put your names. You can put yourself as the Tasmanian devil, and that's all good. So we just want to know, what the questions are, and so we can actually share them. That being said, I'm American H. We'll be talking soon with a new show topic. Bye for now.